let's look at an example of when the bishop moves too many times. So here we go. So this bishop right here has two good options right now. He can move there or there. And he goes out to here. Now, this is a normal opening. This is called the Roy Lopez. The idea is you bring your knight or your bishop to attack this knight, and you are pressuring the middle, while the other knight is also defending the middle. If the D pawn moves forward, this knight becomes pinned to the king. So that's some basic ideas in the Roy Lopez. However, the Roy Lopez really begins when you use this pawn right here. That's the best response. And white has a choice. He can take, she can move back, or they can retreat the bishop to one of these two squares. So in this situation, we're going to take the knight for the example. So we take back here, castles, and then we have a pin here, and we're going to really be looking at this bishop. Now, I want you to note that white's bishop moved once, then twice, and traded off for a knight. And that was okay because it's part of an opening that we know about. Let's watch this bishop and see what happens. So it's moved once. It's now under attack. Now, if it took here, that's probably okay. Not my favorite move, but it would work. However, the bishop retreats back, keeping the pin. So now we have moved the bishop 2 times, but we didn't trade it off. So G4 happens, attacking the bishop. You'll notice that white's king position is a little bit loose. That means there's a lot of space around it, which isn't always good, but it does mean this bishop has to move again. So the bishop runs away. Knight takes e5, threatens to take the bishop. So a lot of people might prefer to do this move to try to open up the rook file and maybe bring the queen in and try to do an attack. However, in this game, black decides to take a pawn and move the bishop again. So far the bishop has done 1, 2, 3, 4 moves. Now things are getting a little tricky. You'll notice that white's knight has moved 2 times. But there's a dangerous e-file here. If black had kept this pawn on e4, their king would be a little safer, but watch what happens. Uh-oh. The rook attacks the bishop, and if the bishop moves, then we end up in a situation like this, where we discover the king with a check and attack the queen at the same time. So if we get out of the check, the knight still takes the queen, and that would be very bad for black. So because black knew that, black did not move the bishop and instead used their queen to defend the bishop. But this doesn't work very well because of knight to here, which attacks both. And you'll notice there are 2 attackers on the bishop and only 1 defender, which is the queen. So since it's going to be 2 versus 1, that's not going to be enough to keep the bishop. So they decide to take the knight, which was probably also not good, because rook takes, pins the queen to the king, and all that's left to do is take the rook, and now white is winning, and white is very happy. However, a couple of different things could have happened. Let's go look at them real quick. So we played queen d5, but let's say the bishop moves away instead. Well, we still have this threat that I showed you before. What happens if instead of bishop to d5, we play bishop to g6? Well, I kind of went over that where you could take here, but there's another tactic that is worth at least mentioning. Knight takes this bishop. Okay, so we're attacking the king with a check. The king gets out of check, probably with a move like this, would be my guess. And then we take the rook. So even if you didn't notice the fancy way to win the queen, you would still lose a rook. So this would be very bad. And you'll notice that that knight did in fact multi-move, but it took three pieces. It took a pawn right here, a bishop right here, and a rook right here. So when you're multi-moving, if you're taking lots of pieces while doing it, it can be worth it. The problem is, it doesn't usually work out that way. Let's look at a different kind of multi-moving, where you move too many pawns. Not the same pawn over and over, but you move too many pawns. This is also called multi-moving. So watch what happens. We're really just looking at the pawn moves here. We're not really worried about the piece movements, but you'll notice that I'm right here. You have two knight moves with the red arrows and two bishop moves with the green arrows. So we're still tracking multi-moving for pieces, but because black's bishop and white's knight both move two times, it cancels out. So it's okay. So that pawn moved two times, or the black pawn moved two times. And now this knight has moved three times. Okay. The black knight has moved two times, and now the white bishop has moved two times. And you can see it's making a threat right here, but that threat is defended. So I was telling you this is going to be about pawns, but so far we just moved pieces. Well, from this point forward, black moves way too many pawns. And this is considered multi-moving because it is not really developing any of the pieces on the back row. So here we go. F6, C6. You'll see this pawn move here. And you'll notice the difference is the last three moves, or actually the last four moves, black has moved these pawns. Or no, I'm sorry, last three moves. Black has moved these three pawns. But white has been moving pieces, which means they're actually developing pieces, which is better to do than moving lots of pawns. So here we go. Another pawn move to B6. Another pawn move to G6. You'll notice these two pawns are now not defended. For the last two moves, these two pawns were both defended, and now they're not. And so that is often the problem with moving too many pawns, is you start making too many pawns get very weak. So here we go. And you'll see we've had a couple of knight moves for black, but not enough to do a whole lot. And because of all the pawn moves, you'll see there's not a lot of ways to defend the king right now. This is looking really bad for black. So they defend this way. These arrows show all the different threats. There's a threat to take the knight. There's a threat to take the rook. And when we take the rook, we threaten to take the queen with our rook on D1 right here. See, it lines up with the queen when that moves away. So bishop takes there. They're threatening our queen. We take their queen first with check. And then we go here, and the game is about to be over because of checkmate. And black lost this game because they moved way too many pawns when they should have been moving pieces. Okay, so let's conclude with a game where both sides play perfectly well. So watch this. Both sides have moved a pawn. Both sides have moved a knight. Both sides have moved a bishop, and you'll see both sides have two pieces that have developed. So that's very good. The pawn on C3 threatens to play D4. So you'll notice this pawn moved forward to help this other pawn move forward. Instead, we're going to defend the pawn like this. Now, this did move two times. And again, a little bit of multi-moving can sometimes be okay. You'll notice that even though they move this twice, black is not going to suddenly checkmate white. So this is okay. It's just you don't want to multi-move always or too often. So once is generally going to be okay. Um, so here we go. You'll see these green arrows are showing you the path that this knight will take, and that looks like a multi-moving path. Um, but again, as long as they don't fall behind in development or allow black to get a big advantage, this is okay. So here we go. So we just moved this bishop here, and then up to here. So that bishop has moved 3 times, but the black rook has moved 2 times, so that mostly balances out. So here we go. You'll see this knight is now over here. You'll notice that basically black has 4 pieces developed and white has 3 pieces developed. And you'll notice, if you remember, white multi-moved with their bishop and then they took it again here. So white is okay because they're only down 1 piece in development, which is just fine. So here we go. Now see, that looks like moving the pawn. We moved that pawn 3 times, but 2 of its moves, like the first time it moved, it was defending e4. But here, it's threatening to take the bishop, and the bishop runs away. And here, it's threatening to take the knight. So remember, when you're multi-moving by capturing pieces or multi-moving by making threats, it's often a little bit more understandable. So here, white has not made any errors. So you'll notice this knight has moved 2 times. So even though this pawn has moved 3 times so far, it forced the knight to move a 2nd time, and that's okay. That cancels out white's many pawn moves. So here we go, h3. h3 is stopping something very important. This knight moved to here because you would have 2 pieces attacking on f2, and that would be, there's not really a good way to defend against that, except for playing h3. So if the knight tries to do it anyway, you could then just take the knight. So h3 is a good move. c6 attacks the middle. The c2 pawn has moved 2 times to c4, and it's defending. But again, pawn moves often cancel pawn moves, so that's okay. Knight g6. So you'll notice that this knight did this, here, here, and here. That's 3 moves, whereas this knight did this. It did 1, 2, 3. So you can kind of compare the 2 different paths that the knights made. They're very similar. Slightly different, but similar. And both sides, are pretty equal right now. So here we go. And this is where we'll end it. Basically, both sides have developed their knights. Both sides have moved several pawns in the middle. Both sides have their, rooks moved out a bit, and their queens and rooks are all active, and they have space, that they can do things, like this. So this is an example of both sides playing pretty well. Neither player has a big advantage right now. It's actually pretty equal game. So I hope this explanation of when it's okay to make multiple moves and when it is not can help guide you to make better chess decisions, chess cadets. So I'm going to sign off now. I have some repairs to do on my ship, and I will be back with another lesson on another day.